If you're a basketball fan, you've probably heard some crazy debates before. But what Rich Paul recently said about Michael Jordan might be one of the most controversial takes we've heard in a long time. And the craziest part? It happened during a conversation with Max Kellerman, where Max actually defended Jordan. Yes, you heard that right. Max Kellerman argued that if Michael Jordan played in today's NBA, he could average a 40-point triple-double. And Rich Paul immediately shut it down. But when you actually listen to the argument closely, something interesting happens. Because the logic Max Kellerman used is actually pretty strong. And the counter-argument from Rich Paul? Well, let's just say it raises a lot of questions. So today, we're going to break this whole debate down. We're going to look at the numbers, we're going to look at the era differences, and we're going to answer the real question. Would Michael Jordan dominate today's NBA? Or is this just nostalgia talking? Let's start with what Max Kellerman actually said. During the podcast conversation, Max made a bold claim. He said if Michael Jordan played in today's game with the modern style, modern spacing, and modern usage rates, Jordan could realistically average a 40-point triple-double. Now that sounds insane at first, but Max didn't just throw it out there randomly. He actually explained his reasoning. First, he talked about usage rate. In Jordan's era, the offense didn't run through a single player the way it often does today. Yes, Jordan dominated the ball a lot, but compared to today's superstars, the offense was still more structured. Today, the primary star basically controls everything. Look at players like Luka Doncic, James Harden, or even LeBron James during certain stretches. The ball is in their hands constantly. They initiate the offense, they create the shots, they control the tempo. Max's argument was simple. If Jordan had the same level of control in today's offense, his numbers would explode. And honestly, he might have a point, because Jordan already had ridiculous numbers in a much slower, more physical era. In the 1988-89 season, Jordan actually played a stretch where he was essentially the point guard, and during that time, he averaged 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists per game. That's almost a triple-double already, and that was without modern spacing, without today's three-point heavy offense, and while dealing with defenses that were far more physical. Which leads to the second part of Max's argument, the three-point shot. One of the biggest criticisms people throw at Michael Jordan is his three-point shooting. They say he wasn't a great three-point shooter, but the numbers are more complicated than that. Jordan was a career 32-33% three-point shooter, which isn't elite, but it's also misleading, because Jordan simply didn't take many threes. In his era, the three-point shot wasn't emphasized the way it is today. But when Jordan actually took a higher volume of threes, something interesting happened. His percentages went up. There were seasons where Jordan shot 37% or better from three when he attempted around 3 per game. And in the 1989-90 season, with the normal three-point line distance, he shot 37.6% from three. That's already a solid percentage. Now imagine if Jordan grew up in today's basketball system, where players practice three-point shooting constantly, where offensive spacing creates wide-open shots, where superstars sometimes take 8 to 10 threes per game. Max's argument was that Jordan would adapt, and if Jordan adapted his game to modern basketball, his scoring could become even more ridiculous. But this is where Rich Paul jumped in, and he completely rejected the idea. Rich Paul argued that today's players wouldn't just sit around and let one guy dominate the ball. He said players today don't respect the pecking order the way players used to. According to Rich Paul, young players today come into the league believing they're the guy. They're not just going to bow down to someone else. And on the surface, that sounds like a reasonable argument. But here's the problem. We literally see the opposite happening all the time. When a true superstar emerges, the entire team naturally revolves around them. It happened with James Harden in Houston. It happens with Luka Doncic in Dallas. It happened with LeBron James for nearly 2 decades. When a player is clearly the best on the floor, teammates don't fight for control. They adjust. They accept their roles, because winning matters. And if Michael Jordan walked into today's NBA with his level of talent and competitiveness, it's hard to imagine teammates refusing to let him lead. In fact, history suggests the exact opposite. Jordan didn't just lead teams, he dominated them. His mentality was legendary. Teammates often described Jordan as relentless, intense, and sometimes even intimidating. He pushed everyone around him to be better. And opponents? There are countless stories of players who said going up against Jordan felt like entering a psychological war. He didn't just want to beat you, he wanted to destroy your confidence. Jordan's competitive mindset was unlike almost anything we've seen. And that mentality is one of the biggest reasons many analysts believe he would thrive in today's NBA, because the modern game favors offensive stars more than ever before. Let's talk about defense rules. During Jordan's prime years, defenders were allowed to be far more physical. Hand-checking was legal. Defenders could guide ball handlers with their hands. They could bump, push, and pressure players constantly. Today, most of those defensive tactics are illegal. Hand-checking is banned. Freedom of movement rules heavily favor offensive players. Even minor contact can result in a foul. Now think about that for a moment. Michael Jordan was already averaging 30-plus points per game while being hand-checked, pushed, and double-teamed constantly. He was scoring in an era where defenders were allowed to be extremely physical. So what would happen if those restrictions disappeared? What would happen if defenders couldn't touch him the way they used to? It's a scary thought, because Jordan's greatest strength was attacking the basket. His first step was explosive, his mid-range game was unstoppable, and his body control in the air was legendary. Remove physical defense from that equation, and suddenly you're looking at a player who might be even harder to guard than he already was. Then there's the pace of the modern NBA. Today's game has more possessions. More possessions means more opportunities to score. During Jordan's era, teams averaged significantly fewer possessions per game compared to today. That means players had fewer scoring chances overall. Yet Jordan still managed to average over 30 points per game for his career. Only a handful of players in NBA history have even come close to that. So imagine Jordan playing in a faster system with more spacing, more three-point shooting, and defensive rules that favor offensive players. His numbers could skyrocket. But here's where the debate gets interesting. Because even if you believe Jordan would dominate today's game, a 40-point triple-double average still sounds extreme. That's a historically insane stat line. Even players like Russell Westbrook, who averaged a triple-double multiple times, never averaged 40 points with it. James Harden had scoring seasons near 36 points per game, but even he didn't average a triple-double with it. So Max Kellerman's claim might be exaggerated, but the core idea behind it isn't crazy. Because Jordan was capable of putting up huge numbers when the offense ran entirely through him. We saw flashes of it throughout his career, games with 50 points, games with triple-doubles, playoff performances that looked almost superhuman. Jordan holds the NBA record for the highest career playoff scoring average. He scored 33.4 points per game in the playoffs. Think about that. The playoffs are supposed to be harder. Defenses get better, the pressure increases, and yet Jordan scored even more. That's what separates legends from regular superstars, and that's why the debate about Jordan in today's NBA never really goes away, because every generation wants to compare eras. Older fans say the league is softer today. Younger fans say players today are more skilled. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Basketball evolves, players adapt, and the greatest competitors always find ways to succeed. If Michael Jordan grew up in today's basketball system, he would likely develop different skills. He'd probably shoot more threes. He'd train with modern analytics. He'd take advantage of advanced sports science and recovery methods. In other words, he wouldn't be the exact same player we saw in the 1990s. He'd be a modernized version of Michael Jordan. And that idea alone is terrifying for the rest of the league, because Jordan already had the most important trait any superstar can have, an obsession with winning. Jordan didn't care about being popular. He didn't care about making friends on the court. He cared about one thing: winning. And if you gave that mindset the advantages of today's NBA system, it's hard to imagine him not dominating. So when Rich Paul says players today wouldn't respect the pecking order, that might underestimate just how powerful greatness really is. Great players command respect automatically, not because people bow down, but because the talent is undeniable.
When someone walks onto the court and proves they're the best player every night, everyone sees it. Teammates see it, opponents see it, fans see it. And if Michael Jordan entered today's NBA with the same skill,
all of it could still exist. Maybe the numbers would be different, maybe the style would evolve, but the outcome? The outcome might be exactly the same. Because some players transcend eras, and Michael Jordan might be the greatest example of that. So the real question isn't whether Jordan would survive in today's NBA. The real question might be this: would today's NBA be ready for Michael Jordan? And if history tells us anything, the answer might be no. Because if history has shown us anything about Michael Jordan, it's that he had a way of making the impossible look routine. Every era had its stars, every era had its champions. But Jordan wasn't just another superstar dominating his time. He changed the way people understood greatness. When Jordan entered the NBA in 1984, the league already had legends. Magic Johnson was running the show in Los Angeles. Larry Bird was dominating with the Boston Celtics. The NBA was already filled with talent and personality, but Jordan quickly separated himself from everyone else. It wasn't just about scoring. It wasn't just about athleticism. It was about the way he approached the game. Jordan treated every matchup like a personal battle. Every slight, every comment, every doubt became fuel. If someone said he couldn't do something, that immediately became the next thing he was determined to prove. And that mentality is something that would translate to any era. Because basketball skills evolve over time, but competitive fire doesn't. That part of the game is timeless. Now, let's talk about another major factor that often gets ignored in these debates: spacing. Modern NBA offenses are built around spacing the floor with shooters. In Jordan's era, teams often played with two traditional big men inside the paint. That meant the lane was crowded. Driving to the basket meant running into multiple defenders waiting at the rim. Yet Jordan still dominated. He attacked the basket relentlessly. He finished through contact. He created impossible angles in the air that defenders simply couldn't stop. Now imagine Jordan playing in today's system. 4 shooters around him, the paint wide open, defenders unable to hand-check him on the perimeter. That scenario alone would create scoring opportunities that simply didn't exist during most of Jordan's career. Defenders would be forced into impossible choices. If they stayed home on shooters, Jordan would attack the rim. If they collapsed to stop the drive, he'd kick out to open shooters. And if they tried to guard him one-on-one, well, history has already shown how that usually ends. Another important part of this debate is athleticism. Some people argue that today's NBA athletes are bigger, stronger, and faster than players in the past, and in some cases that's true. Sports science has improved. Training methods have evolved. But Jordan's athleticism wasn't normal even by modern standards. His vertical leap, body control, speed, and balance were elite in any era. Jordan wasn't just athletic, he was technically perfect in the air. He could adjust mid-flight, avoid defenders, and finish with either hand. His hang time was legendary. Defenders would jump with him only to realize he was still floating while they were already coming down. That type of ability doesn't suddenly become less effective in modern basketball. If anything, it becomes even more dangerous. Because modern defenses are built around protecting the three-point line and limiting rim attempts. Jordan excelled at attacking both areas. His mid-range game was surgical. His footwork was masterful. His ability to create space with fadeaways and pull-ups made him nearly impossible to guard in isolation. And if we're being honest, the mid-range shot is one of the areas where modern defenses are most vulnerable. Many teams are so focused on stopping threes and layups that mid-range specialists can thrive. We've seen players like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and DeMar DeRozan build entire arsenals in that area. Now imagine the greatest mid-range scorer ever operating in that same environment. Jordan's fadeaway jumper would still be unguardable. His footwork would still leave defenders off balance, and his killer instinct would still push him to attack weaknesses relentlessly. Which brings us back to the mindset that made Jordan special. Because beyond the numbers, beyond the highlights, beyond the championships,